Have you ever wondered, could the biggest wound in your life be the most sacred gift? I need you to breathe with me for just a moment, because what I'm about to share, it's not for everyone scrolling by. It's for you, the one whose heart just quickened at those words, the one carrying something broken, something you've been hiding even from yourself. Your soul knows this voice. There's an ancient Japanese art called kintsugi. When a precious ceramic bowl breaks, they don't throw it away. They take liquid gold and they fill every crack, every fracture, every place where it shattered. And when they're finished, it's more beautiful than it ever was whole. The cracks become the masterpiece. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a crack in your life you've been trying to hide. A place where something broke you, where life didn't go as planned, where trust was shattered, where dreams died. You've spent years trying to cover it up, pretend it didn't happen, push through the pain. But what if I told you that crack is where the light gets in? What if the wound you've been hiding is actually the sacred space where your miracle is waiting to pour through? I know this sounds impossible because you've been told that broken things are worthless, that you need to get over it or move on, that your pain is something to overcome, not something to honor. But I've learned something in the deepest places of my own shattering. The divine doesn't waste wounds. Every crack in your heart is a doorway. Every place you broke open is where the gold gets to flow in. I remember the night I thought my life was completely over, sitting on my kitchen floor at 3 a.m., surrounded by the pieces of everything I thought defined me. My marriage, my dreams, my sense of who I was supposed to be, all shattered. And in that moment, when I had nothing left to lose, something shifted. I stopped trying to put the pieces back together the way they were. I started asking, what if this breaking was making space for something I could never have imagined? That's when I discovered the secret that changed everything. Your pain isn't random. Your breaking isn't meaningless. It's strategic. And today, if you're brave enough, if you're tired enough of pretending that broken place doesn't exist, we're going to look at it together, not to fix it, not to explain it away, but to see it for what it really is. Your sacred wound, your golden crack, the place where only your specific miracle can enter. Would you dare to write down the name of the most painful memory of your life, just one word, just for you? Not in the comments. Just acknowledge it exists. Because here's what no one has told you. That word you just thought of, that memory that made your chest tighten, it's not your shame. It's your spiritual address, the place where heaven meets earth in your story, where the ordinary becomes sacred, where your deepest pain transforms into your greatest gift. You see, we live in a world that tells us to hide our scars, to cover our cracks, to pretend we're unbreakable. But what if the opposite is true? What if your vulnerability is your superpower? What if your brokenness is your breakthrough? What if the thing you've been most ashamed of is actually your greatest strength? This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about pretending it doesn't hurt. This is about seeing with new eyes, about understanding that some things have to break before they can become beautiful. Some seeds have to crack open in the dark before they can reach toward the light. Some hearts have to shatter before they can hold the kind of love that changes everything. And some souls, like yours, have to walk through the fire before they discover they were born to bring light to others walking through their own darkness. If this is touching something deep inside you, something you've never named before, something that feels both tender and true, Write these words: I am willing to look at the cracks in my life with new eyes, because what we're about to discover together, no one can receive for you. This miracle has your name written on it. Your pain has been preparing you for your purpose. Your wound has been shaping your wisdom. Your breaking has been building your breakthrough. What if you discovered that the wound you've been hiding is where the light of your destiny has been waiting to burst forth? Let's find out together. You know what I've discovered after walking with thousands of souls through their deepest winter seasons. The most dangerous enemy you'll ever face isn't standing in front of you. It's whispering inside you, and it sounds exactly like your own voice. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a frozen field in your soul, barren, silent, convinced that nothing beautiful will ever grow there again. But what if I told you that field isn't dead? What if every harsh word you've believed about yourself, every cruel label that found a home in your heart, every moment you looked in the mirror and decided you weren't enough, what if all of that was just winter ice covering the most fertile ground you've ever possessed? Tell me about a memory you've always wanted to forget. Just share one random letter, one character that represents that moment. Don't explain it, just acknowledge it exists, because I need you to understand something that took me 43 years to learn. That memory, that moment that convinced you that you were broken, inadequate, too old, too late. It wasn't the truth about you. It was just someone else's winter, trying to freeze your spring. I remember standing in my childhood kitchen at 7 years old, my mother's voice cutting through the morning air like shards of ice. You're just like your father, weak, never going to amount to anything. 7 years old, and in that moment, something inside me cracked, but not in the way I thought. For the next 36 years, I carried her voice like gospel truth. Every time I tried to dream, you're weak. Every time I attempted to create, you'll never amount to anything. Every time I dared to hope for more, her winter would freeze my spring before it could even begin. Until one December morning, I found myself sitting in that same kitchen, 43 years old. My dreams suffocating under the weight of a lie I'd been watering with my own tears, and something cracked open inside me. Not broke, cracked, like a seed that finally couldn't contain what it was meant to become. I picked up a pen and I started writing, not to prove her wrong, not to show anyone anything, but because I finally heard the truth beneath the lie. My weakness wasn't my disqualification. It was my qualification for grace, the belief that had frozen my soul for decades. You'll never amount to anything. It wasn't melting gradually. It was shattering all at once, like ice breaking on a river in spring, and beneath it, something wild and alive had been waiting all along. What about you, beloved? What lie have you been feeding with your attention? What cruel story have you been rehearsing in voices that were never yours to begin with? Listen, can you hear them? I'm too old now, the young ones are taking over. I missed my chance, God moved on without me. I'm not educated enough, not tech-savvy enough, not relevant enough. The church doesn't need someone like me anymore. I'm past my expiration date. Do you hear it? That whisper that sounds so much like wisdom, but tastes like poison. That's not your voice, dear one. That's the echo of a culture that throws away what it doesn't understand, trying to convince you that your season has passed. But here's what I learned in that kitchen, what I want you to feel in your bones right now. The moment you stop feeding those lies, they start starving. The moment you stop rehearsing those stories, they lose their script. The moment you choose to see yourself through the eyes of the one who called you, instead of the voices that tried to cage you, everything changes, not slowly, not gradually, like ice cracking, like dawn breaking, like seeds exploding into life after the longest winter. You see, every destructive belief you carry was planted by someone who was afraid of your light. Your mother, who called you weak, was terrified of her own strength. Your father, who said you'd never succeed, was drowning in his own failures. Your spouse, who convinced you that you were too much, was overwhelmed by their own emptiness. Your boss, who treated you like you were disposable, was desperate to feel powerful over something. The younger generation that makes you feel obsolete is simply repeating the same cycle, trying to freeze your spring to warm their own winter. But none of them, not one, had the authority to name you. Only the one who formed you in secret, who knitted you together with purpose, who called you before you could even speak. Only he gets to say who you are, and he calls you chosen, beloved, irreplaceable, not because of what you've accomplished, not because of how well you've performed, but because of what he planted in you before the world ever had a chance to tell you who you couldn't be. I want you to try something with me right now. Think of the most destructive belief you carry about yourself, the one that makes you small, the one that steals your sleep, the one that whispers, "It's too late," every time your heart whispers, "What if?" Got it? Now I want you to imagine that belief as a sheet of ice covering a field. Feel how cold it is, how thick, how it makes everything beneath seem dead and barren. And now, I want you to imagine the sun rising. Feel the warmth on your face, the light penetrating the darkness, the ice beginning to crack, then melt, then disappear completely, revealing soil so rich, so ready, so pregnant with possibility that you can almost see the green shoots pushing through. Because that's what happens when truth meets lies, when love meets fear, when the real you meets the stories others told you about who you are. The ice doesn't fight back, it can't. It simply surrenders to warmth. This is your moment, dear one. Your winter field has been lying dormant, not because it's dead, but because it's been waiting for you to stop believing the voices that tried to freeze your destiny, waiting for you to remember that every ending is just a beginning in disguise, waiting for you to understand that the very thing they called your weakness is actually your superpower. Write down a self-destructive belief you once had, and today, try to break it. Not with force, not with anger, with breath, with warmth, with the gentle recognition that frozen things were always meant to thaw. Your field is ready, beloved. The seeds beneath the surface have been cracking in the darkness, splitting open, getting ready to show you what was always meant to grow there. And what's about to emerge will be more beautiful than anything that came before. Because broken ground is the only ground that can birth miracles. The voices that tried to name you, they were just winter. But you were always meant to be spring. If every winter is just a stepping stone for you to sprout again, would you dare to look back at your entire past and see it not as damage, but as preparation? The soil of your soul has been enriched by every tear, and spring, beloved spring, is already breaking through the ice. You know what I've discovered in 20 years of walking with broken souls. The most powerful healing never happens in public. It happens in the secret room of your heart, where no one else can enter, where you finally stop performing and start receiving. Right now, I want you to close your eyes with me, not because I'm asking you to escape reality, but because I'm inviting you to enter the most real place you've ever known, your secret healing station. Picture this. Somewhere deep inside your chest, there's a room that belongs only to you. The walls are made of golden light, the floor soft as morning mist, and in the center, a bridge of pure love, connecting your wounded heart to the heart of the divine. This isn't imagination, beloved. This is the sacred space where miracles are born. Just draw a secret symbol on a piece of paper. Keep it to yourself. Let it mark the moment you begin to heal, because what I'm about to share with you, it changed everything for me. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I'd been carrying depression like a stone in my chest for months. The kind that makes breathing feel like work. The kind that steals color from sunsets. I'd tried everything: therapy, medication, prayer circles, self-help books. Nothing touched the darkness that had made a home in my soul. Until that night, when I finally stopped looking for healing outside myself and stepped into the secret room I'd been afraid to enter. I sat at my old piano, the one gathering dust in the corner, and I started playing, not for anyone else, not for God even, but for the broken part of me that had never heard its own song. Note by note, something began to shift. Not because the music was beautiful, it wasn't, but because for the first time in months, I was completely alone with my pain, and I wasn't trying to fix it. I was just witnessing it, honoring it, letting it sing its sorrow through my fingers. And in that sacred solitude, something extraordinary happened. The darkness didn't disappear. It transformed into depth, into wisdom, into a melody that could only be born from brokenness. That song became my medicine, my secret healing station. Every morning for months, I would sit at that piano and play my pain into purpose. And slowly, so slowly, I almost missed it. The stone in my chest began to dissolve. Not because someone else healed me, but because I finally learned how to meet myself in the secret place where healing lives. What about you, dear one? When was the last time you entered your own secret healing station? When did you last create space, sacred, uninterrupted space, to be alone with your wounds, without trying to explain them away or fix them or pretend they don't exist? Because here's what I've learned. What I want you to feel in your bones right now. Your healing doesn't require anyone else's permission. It doesn't need a church building or a prayer group or a pastor's blessing. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's journey. Your secret healing station is uniquely yours. Maybe your medicine is writing letters you'll never send. Maybe it's painting your emotions onto canvas with colors that have no names. Maybe it's walking barefoot in your backyard, feeling the earth hold your sorrow. Maybe it's cooking a meal with tears in your eyes, seasoning it with gratitude for your own survival. Maybe it's singing in your car at the top of your lungs, letting your voice crack on the high notes, because broken voices often carry the most truth. The medicine doesn't matter. What matters is that you show up, that you create the space, that you honor your pain enough to be present with it. I want you to try something with me right now. Take a deep breath and imagine walking down a corridor made of light. At the end, there's a door that belongs only to you. The handle is warm in your hand. You turn it and step inside. This is your secret healing station. Look around. What do you see? Maybe there's a comfortable chair by a window that overlooks peace. Maybe there's a table with blank paper and colored pencils. Maybe there's a sound garden where every hurt you've ever carried can finally find its voice. This is your space, beloved. No one else gets to enter. No one else gets to judge. No one else gets to tell you how healing should look. And in the center of this room, there's a presence waiting for you. Not demanding, not judging, not rushing, just loving you exactly as you are. Broken, beautiful, worthy of tenderness. When you are alone with the Holy Spirit, what would you say first? What words have been stuck in your throat for years? What confession has been burning in your chest, waiting for a safe place to land? Say it now, in the privacy of your heart, in the sanctuary of your secret room. I never dared to say, I'm tired of being strong. I never dared to say, I feel forgotten by everyone, including God. I never dared to say, I'm scared that my best years are behind me. I never dared to say, I don't know how to matter anymore. Whatever it is, let it rise, let it breathe, let it be held by hands that will never drop what you've entrusted to them. Because this is where healing begins, not in the fixing, but in the feeling, not in the answers, but in the acknowledgement, not in the strength to carry on, but in the courage to finally set it down. I remember that Tuesday night, when I played my pain into music, something whispered to me in the silence between notes. You don't have to heal alone, but you do have to heal as yourself. Your secret healing station isn't about isolation. It's about integration. It's the place where you learn to be your own first responder, your own gentle witness, your own sacred space keeper, so that when you re-enter the world, you're not carrying an empty cup begging others to fill it. You're carrying a well of healing that you've learned to tend with your own hands. Write yourself a letter. Start with, I never dared to say, and let your heart spill onto the page, not for anyone else to read, but for you to finally hear your own voice, speaking truth in the secret place where miracles are born. Your healing station is ready, beloved. Your medicine is waiting. Your pain is not your enemy. It's your invitation to discover just how powerful you really are. When you stop looking for someone else to heal you and start learning to meet yourself with the same tenderness you'd offer a wounded child, everything changes. You become your own sanctuary, your own sacred space, your own secret healing station. And from that place of inner wholeness, you'll discover that you have medicine to offer a world that's desperate for the kind of healing that can only come from someone who's learned to heal themselves. When you are alone with the Holy Spirit, what would you say first? The answer to that question is where your resurrection begins. You know what I learned when I died. Not physically, but spiritually, emotionally, when everything I thought defined me turned to ash in my hands. I learned that death isn't the opposite of life. It's the doorway to it. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's something in your life that feels completely dead, finished, beyond resurrection. A dream that failed so catastrophically you're embarrassed to even remember it. A relationship that ended so brutally it left you questioning whether you're even capable of love. A season when you lost everything, your health, your purpose, your place in the world, and you're still not sure you've recovered. What if I told you that thing you think is your greatest failure is actually your most fertile ground? What if your own ashes were the richest soil you've ever possessed? Let me tell you about the day I burned my life to the ground. March 15th, 2019, 3:47 p.m. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of what used to be my company, the business I'd poured my life into for 12 years, the one that defined me, fed my family, gave me identity. Gone. Not just struggling, gone. Bankruptcy papers in my briefcase, keys to an empty office in my pocket, and a phone call I had to make to my wife to tell her we'd lost everything. The house, the savings, the future we'd planned. I sat in that car for 2 hours, watching people walk past, living their lives, while mine lay in ashes around me. And for the first time in my adult life, I had absolutely no idea who I was. Without the business card, without the title, without the success story, who was I? That night, I couldn't sleep. So I walked 4 miles through our neighborhood, past houses where families were settling in for the evening, past windows glowing with the warmth of lives that still made sense. And somewhere between mile 2 and mile 3, something shifted. I stopped walking, and I started seeing the burnt field beside the road, the one that had been devastated by wildfire 6 months earlier. And there, pushing through the blackened earth, tiny green shoots, life, growing from death. And in that moment, standing alone in the darkness, I heard a whisper that changed everything. What if this isn't your ending? What if this is your planting? Choose a small action, like writing a diary, calling someone, cooking for yourself, to mark the day of rebirth. Because what happened next, I could never have planned. The next morning, instead of sending out resumes, instead of trying to rebuild what I'd lost, I did something completely unexpected. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She was 82, lived alone, had been struggling since her husband died, and I asked her, "Can I bring you dinner tonight?" Not because I was trying to be noble, not because I had some grand plan, but because in my complete emptiness, helping someone else was the only thing that felt real. That night, I sat at her kitchen table, listening to her stories, hearing about her dreams that never happened, her regrets, her loneliness, and something extraordinary occurred. As I listened to her pain, my own pain began to transform, not disappear, transform into empathy, into purpose, into a fire I'd never felt before. Within a week, I was visiting 3 elderly neighbors. Within a month, I was organizing a support network for seniors in our community. Within 6 months, I'd started a nonprofit that connected isolated seniors with people like me, people who'd lost their way and needed to remember what mattered. Today, 5 years later, that organization serves over 3,000 seniors across 7 states. The thing that felt like my greatest failure became the foundation for my greatest purpose. The ashes of my old life became the soil for a life I could never have imagined. But here's what I need you to understand. It didn't happen because I was special. It didn't happen because I was strong. It happened because I was willing to let my failure become fertilizer. What about you, beloved? What failure have you been treating like a gravestone when it might actually be planted seed? What ending have you been mourning when it might be a beginning in disguise? What season of loss have you been calling tragedy when it might be the very thing that qualifies you to heal others walking through the same darkness? You see, the world tells us that failure disqualifies us, that mistakes mark us, that when we fall, we should be ashamed. But what if the opposite is true? What if your deepest wounds make you the most qualified healer? What if your greatest losses give you the richest wisdom to offer? What if the very things that broke you are exactly what someone else needs to see to believe that breaking doesn't mean ending. I think about Mrs. Chen often. She died 2 years ago, peacefully in her own home, surrounded by the community that grew from my ashes. At her funeral, her daughter pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. My mother told me that meeting you saved her life, but what she didn't know is that she saved yours too. She was right. In the middle of my own death, I found life by giving it away. In the darkness of my own failure, I discovered light by sharing it with someone else. In the ashes of everything I thought mattered, I found what actually did. This is the secret they don't tell you about resurrection. It doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection. It doesn't come through avoiding your pain. It comes through transforming your pain into medicine for others. It doesn't arrive when you pretend you're strong. It emerges when you're brave enough to let your weakness become your wisdom. Right now, I want you to think about the most devastating failure of your life. The one that still makes your chest tight when you remember it. The one you've convinced yourself was just waste. Now I want you to imagine, what if that experience, that specific pain, that particular kind of breaking, what if it qualified you to speak hope into someone who's walking through the exact same darkness? What if your failure was actually your appointment? What if your ashes were meant to become someone else's foundation? Write down a failure, a pain that you once thought was a dead end. And today, try to turn it into motivation. Not motivation to prove yourself, not motivation to get back what you lost, but motivation to let what you learned in the ashes become light for someone still trapped in the fire. Because here's what I've discovered in 20 years of walking with broken souls. The people who transform the world aren't the ones who never fell. They're the ones who fell and chose to let their falling become flying. They're the ones who burned and discovered that from ashes, phoenixes rise. They're the ones who died and realized that death was just the cocoon before resurrection. Your ashes are ready, beloved. Your burnt field is pregnant with possibility. Your greatest failure is about to become your most powerful testimony. But not for you, for the person who needs to see that endings can become beginnings, that failures can become foundations, that ashes can become the richest soil for the most beautiful garden. What if your own ashes were the most fertile material for you to rise? The answer to that question is waiting in the small action you take today, in the phone call you make, in the kindness you offer, in the pain you transform into purpose. Your resurrection doesn't start tomorrow. It starts now, in the ashes, where life always begins again. You know what breaks my heart about how we talk about legacy? We make it sound like it belongs to the famous, the powerful, the ones whose names end up in history books, as if the only footprints that matter are the ones that get monuments built around them. But what if I told you that right now, in this very moment, you're creating a legacy more precious than any statue could ever capture? What if the small, invisible things you do, the ones no one sees, no one records, no one celebrates, are actually the miracles that hold the world together? Picture this with me. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., an elderly man named Frank walks through Riverside Park in downtown Portland. He carries a small broom and a garbage bag. For 12 years, he swept the paths clean before the joggers arrive. No one hired him. No one pays him. No city council meeting decided this was necessary. Frank just decided that people deserve to run on clean paths. Most mornings, no one sees him. By the time the world wakes up, his work is invisible, just clean paths that somehow maintain themselves. But yesterday I watched a young mother pushing her baby in a stroller down one of those paths. She stopped, breathed deep, smiled at the morning sun filtering through the trees. She had no idea that Frank had been there hours earlier, clearing away the broken glass, sweeping the leaves, making space for her moment of peace. Frank doesn't know her name. She'll never know his. But her smile, that moment of joy, that brief taste of beauty in an otherwise chaotic world. That's his legacy. Write down the name of a small act of kindness you've done in the past 24 hours, just to remind yourself what mark you've left today. Because here's what I've learned in 20 years of watching ordinary people do extraordinary things. Legacy isn't what gets written about you after you're gone. Legacy is what gets felt by people while you're here. It's not about being remembered by history. It's about being a blessing in the present. Think about it. The teacher who stayed after school to help you understand algebra. Do you remember her name? Probably not. But do you remember the feeling of finally understanding, of not being stupid, of someone believing you could learn? That feeling is still alive in you 30 years later. That's her legacy. The neighbor who brought your family dinner when your dad was in the hospital. You might not even remember what she cooked. But do you remember the relief? The sense that you weren't alone? The way love showed up disguised as casserole? That moment of grace shaped how you see community forever. That's her legacy. The stranger who let you go ahead of them in line when you were clearly having the worst day of your life. They'll never know that their small kindness kept you from falling apart completely, but somewhere in your soul, their gentleness is still echoing. That's their legacy. You see, we've been taught that legacy is about monuments, buildings with your name on them, achievements that outlast your lifetime. But what if that's backwards? What if real legacy is about traces, like footprints in sand? They don't last forever, but while they're there, they show someone that a path is possible. Like stones thrown into still water, the ripples spread far beyond where the stone landed, touching shores the thrower will never see. Like books in the library of human experience, each kindness you offer, each moment of grace you extend, each time you choose love over fear, gets cataloged in the souls of everyone who witnesses it, and they carry that book with them forever. Most days you have no idea you're writing these books. You hold the door for someone carrying groceries. Chapter 1, Kindness Exists. You smile at the teenager bagging your groceries who looks like they're having a rough day. Chapter 2, I matter to someone. You let the frazzled mom with 3 kids cut in front of you at the checkout. Chapter 3, Grace is real. You listen. Really listen when your coworker shares something that's weighing on their heart. Chapter 4, I'm not invisible. These aren't grand gestures. They don't require stages or speeches or standing ovations, but they're changing the world, one trace at a time, one invisible miracle at a time. What if I told you that yesterday, in ways you'll never know, you saved someone's faith in humanity? That last week, you modeled the kind of person someone's child wants to become. That this month, your presence in someone's life became the evidence they needed, that good people still exist. You don't need a platform to create legacy. You don't need a title or a following or anyone's permission. You just need to show up as yourself with intention. Every day you get to choose. Will I leave this place a little brighter than I found it? Will I treat people like they matter, even when no one's watching? Will I let my life be a small miracle? in the ordinary moments that make up most of existence. I think about my grandmother. She died 15 years ago, never had a career outside the home, never traveled the world, never started a company or wrote a book or built anything that bears her name. But she had this way of making everyone who entered her house feel like they were the person she'd been waiting all day to see. The mailman, the grocery delivery boy, the neighbor kids who came to sell Girl Scout cookies, all of them, all of us, left her presence feeling more valuable than when we arrived. Her house was a trace of grace in our neighborhood. Her presence was a library of love that we're still reading from today. My cousin David, now a teacher, says he became an educator because of the way Grandma listened to his dreams when he was 8 years old. My sister Sarah, now a nurse, says she learned compassion by watching Grandma tend to anyone who was hurting. My nephew Jake, only 10 years old, says he wants to make people feel happy like great-grandma did. She's been gone for 15 years, but her legacy is still creating legacies. That's the thing about traces, they multiply. Your kindness teaches someone else how to be kind. Your courage gives someone else permission to be brave. Your gentleness shows someone else that strength doesn't require harshness. Your presence becomes their pattern. Your trace becomes their trail. Write down a small act you want to leave behind for the world. No one needs to know, just you need to acknowledge it. Because here's what I want you to understand, beloved. You don't have to wait for the world to notice your value. You don't need external validation to create meaningful impact. You don't have to be famous to be significant. Every day, in ways both seen and unseen, you're writing chapters in the library of human experience. Every choice to love instead of judge leaves a trace. Every moment you choose presence over distraction creates a footprint. Every time you extend grace instead of criticism sends ripples across waters you'll never see. You are not small. You are not insignificant. You are not invisible. You are a walking miracle, leaving traces of heaven in the most ordinary places. And the beautiful truth is, you get to choose how deep those traces go. You get to decide how far those ripples reach. You get to determine what kind of books get written in the souls of everyone whose life intersects with yours. Your legacy isn't waiting for someday. It's happening today. In the smile you offer, the patience you extend, the love you give, in the million small ways you make existence a little more bearable, a little more beautiful, a little more hope-filled. If every trace you leave behind turns into a miracle, will you choose to move forward knowing where your footprints are leading? The answer to that question is creating your legacy right now, one trace at a time, one miracle at a time, one irreplaceable, unrepeatable, absolutely essential you at a time. You know what I've discovered after walking with thousands of souls through their deepest healing journeys. The most profound transformation never happens in isolation. It happens when wounded hearts find other wounded hearts and choose to heal together. Right now, as you've traveled this far with me, something inside you has shifted, cracked open, started breathing again. But here's what I need you to understand. That beautiful transformation you're feeling, it's like a flower that's just begun to bloom. And flowers, beloved, were never meant to grow alone. Picture this with me. Imagine your soul as a unique flower in an endless garden. Maybe you're a wild rose, beautiful but guarded by thorns born from old hurts. Maybe you're a sunflower, always turning toward the light, but carrying the weight of heavy seasons. Maybe you're a lily, elegant and pure, but bruised by storms you never saw coming. For so long you've been growing in isolation, thinking your particular shade of beauty, your specific kind of blooming, was too different, too damaged, too late in the season to matter. But what if I told you there's an underground water source flowing beneath all our individual gardens, a network of grace, connecting every healing heart, feeding every soul brave enough to keep growing? Write down the names of 1-2 people you think could join you on this journey. Because what you've experienced in these past minutes, this awakening, this recognition, this gentle coming back to life, it was never meant to stay locked inside you. It was meant to be shared, witnessed, multiplied through connection. Let me tell you about Sarah, Maria, James, David, and Ruth. 5 strangers who found each other through the most unlikely circumstances, all in their 50s and 60s, all carrying wounds that had convinced them their blooming days were over. Sarah, recently divorced after 30 years feeling invisible in a world obsessed with youth. Maria, struggling with the empty nest, wondering if she had any purpose beyond motherhood. James, laid off at 58, watching younger colleagues take jobs he'd trained for. David, battling depression after losing his father and questioning everything he'd believed about faith. Ruth, carrying shame from a mistake she'd made decades ago, convinced she was beyond forgiveness. They started meeting in Maria's living room every Tuesday evening, not for a formal Bible study or organized program, just to share what they'd been discovering about healing, about hope, about learning to bloom again in seasons they'd thought were endings. They called themselves the Tuesday Garden. Each week they brought their miracle diaries, pages filled with small discoveries, tiny breakthroughs, evidence that transformation was happening in the ordinary moments of their lives. Sarah shared how she'd finally called her estranged sister, how that conversation had watered ground that had been barren for years. Maria talked about the art class she'd enrolled in, how her hands, which had spent decades serving others, were learning to create beauty for its own sake. James spoke about the mentor role he'd taken with young professionals, how his experience, which he'd thought was outdated, was actually wisdom they desperately needed. David read passages he'd written about finding God in new places, in gardens instead of sanctuaries, in silence instead of sermons. Ruth, brave Ruth, shared her journey of self-forgiveness, how she was learning to speak to herself with the same grace she'd always offered others. Within 6 months, something extraordinary happened. They weren't just surviving their individual storms anymore, they were creating their own weather. Their healing had become communal. Their hope had multiplied. Their individual flowers had formed a garden so beautiful it started attracting other wounded souls who'd forgotten they could bloom again. Today, 3 years later, the Tuesday Garden has become a network of 12 small groups across their city. Over 150 people finding healing through the simple act of growing together. But here's what matters most. It didn't start with a program or a platform or a perfect plan. It started with 5 people brave enough to say, "I'm healing and I refuse to heal alone." You see, there's something sacred that happens when wounded souls choose to witness each other's restoration. Your breakthrough becomes evidence for my possibility. My healing becomes hope for your heart. Your courage to try again gives me permission to believe again. When we share our miracle diaries, when we speak our small victories out loud, when we let someone else see that transformation is actually happening, we become living proof that resurrection is real, not just in ancient stories, but in Tuesday evening living rooms, in coffee shop conversations, in the sacred space between two people who've decided that broken doesn't mean finished. This is how healing communities are born, not through perfect people gathering to celebrate their victories, but through imperfect souls choosing to grow together, even when the growth is messy, slow, and sometimes invisible. Find a real companion. Send them a private message about what you discovered after this video, because what you've uncovered about yourself today, the golden cracks, the secret healing station, the phoenix rising from ashes, the legacy you're creating, it's too precious to keep contained in your own heart. It needs to be shared, witnessed, celebrated by someone who understands the courage it took to crack open again. Maybe it's an old friend who's also been feeling forgotten by the world. Maybe it's a family member who's been carrying their own winter seasons. Maybe it's someone at work who you've noticed seems lonely behind their professional smile. Maybe it's a neighbor who could use a reminder that blooming can happen at any age. Start small, start simple. I watched something today that reminded me I'm not finished growing. Want to grow together? Create your own Tuesday garden, your own soul flower sanctuary, your own underground water source where healing flows between hearts that have learned to trust again. Meet weekly. Share your miracle diaries, witness each other's small victories, create space for tears and laughter and the messy, beautiful work of becoming whole. Because here's what I know after 20 years of watching souls transform. Individual healing is beautiful, but communal healing, healing that happens in the safety of being truly known, healing that multiplies as it's shared, that kind of healing changes the world. One Tuesday evening at a time, one shared story at a time, one soul flower garden at a time. Your healing journey has brought you this far alone, but the rest of the path, the most beautiful part, was designed to be walked together. If your wounds became flowers, which garden would you want to cultivate? The answer to that question is waiting in the message you send today, to the person whose name just whispered through your heart, to the soul who's been waiting, just like you, for someone to say, let's heal together. Your garden is ready to expand, beloved, and the most beautiful blooms are always the ones that grow in community. Take a breath with me, close your eyes if you can. Feel the light flowing through every golden crack in your heart. This is the moment, beloved, the moment you stop looking for miracles and start recognizing that you are one. For the past hour, we've walked together through the sacred geography of your soul, through winter fields and secret healing stations, through ashes and footprints and gardens where wounded hearts learn to bloom again. And now you're different than when we began. Can you feel it, that gentle stirring, that quiet knowing, that sense of coming home to yourself? This isn't the end of your story. This is your beginning. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 73 when depression wrapped around her life like fog. For 10 years, she woke up feeling invisible, forgotten, convinced her best days were archived in yesterday. But one morning she did something so simple it seemed insignificant. She wrote down one thing she was grateful for. My coffee is still warm. That's it. 5 words in a notebook nobody would ever see. The next day she wrote another line. The cardinal came back to my feeder. Day by day, gratitude by small gratitude. One tiny miracle recorded. Within 3 months, Margaret's miracle diary filled an entire journal. Within a year, her depression had lifted like morning mist. Today, at 78, she says her life began the day she started writing down the evidence that miracles were already happening. They just needed someone to notice them, someone to record them, someone to believe they mattered. You are that someone, dear one. Your life hasn't expired. Your season isn't over. Your golden cracks aren't damaged. There where the light gets in. Every breath you take is evidence. Every day you choose to keep going is proof. Every small kindness you offer is a miracle in motion. The world told you that you were being replaced by younger voices, that your experience was outdated, that your time had passed. But they were wrong. Your scars are your credentials. Your endurance is your expertise. Your survival is your superpower. You are not invisible. You are irreplaceable. You are not forgotten. You are the fulfillment of someone's deepest prayer. You are not too late. You are right on time. The stream of living water that flows through the desert of this world. It flows through you. The garden that blooms after the storm. It blooms in you. The miracle that someone needs to see, it is you. Comment the miracle you want to see in yourself in the next 7 days. Not just a comment, but a sacred promise between you and the divine. Because when you write those words, when you declare that hope, when you choose to believe again, you're not just interacting with a video. You're participating in your own resurrection. Like this message to agree to receive miracles. Subscribe to join the healing river. Share to transmit miracles to a sleeping soul. But most importantly, let your spirit guide you to your next message. Go to the channel now. Trust what calls to your heart. That stirring you feel when you see a title. That's not coincidence, that's divine guidance leading you to your next breakthrough. Your journey isn't ending, it's expanding. Your healing isn't finished, it's flowering. Your story isn't over, it's being rewritten, one golden crack at a time. Start your miracle diary today. Write down one small evidence that grace is moving in your life. Tomorrow, write another. Watch as the pages fill with proof that you were never forgotten, that you were always seen, that you have always been exactly the miracle the world needed. What if tomorrow you woke up and found a small miracle had sprouted in your heart? What if it's already there, waiting for you to notice? What if you are the miracle? You've been praying for the answer to that question. Is writing itself in every breath you take, every choice you make to keep believing, every moment you choose love over fear. You are the miracle, beloved. You always have been.